In a world where those who defeat the Labyrinth's monsters earn the title of conquerors, the story begins. Conquerors are divided into two groups: certified conquerors who graduate from the Conqueror Academy and freestyle conquerors who never attend it. In this divided society, the tale of adventure unfolds. However, entering the academy demands both wealth and skill, making admission the minimum standard for status. As a result, freestyle conquerors face constant scorn, prejudice, and mockery. This is the journey of a young man rising as a freestyle conqueror. In the mountains near the Labyrinth, at Luke's home, a 15-year-old boy reaches his goal. A status window then appears showing Luke's stats, including HP at 2117 out of 2117 among others. While grappling with basic magic, Luke admits his lack of skill. Still, he is finally able to take the Conqueror Academy's entrance exam. As its name implies, the Academy trains people to become professional conquerors who tackle labyrinths. To gain entry, candidates must pass 3 tests: a status exam, an academic test, and a practical skills test. Luke's dream of becoming a conqueror began 5 years ago when his cherished conqueror parents failed to return home. If he were stronger, he could search for them. When Luke was 10, a monster from the nearby labyrinth frightened him, as reports spread of a mighty dragon emerging from the labyrinth, sparking urgent calls to action. In the library, Luke encounters a mishap when a book suddenly drops, causing him unease from his father's magic book. It turns out to be a beginner's guide to becoming a conqueror, explaining the steps to learn the basics and apply them to the role. With this realization, Luke imagines that by growing stronger and becoming a conqueror, he could find his parents and support himself. To match the strength of his mother and father, ordinary magic won't suffice, so he decides to study hard, enhance his magic, and grow more powerful. Since that moment, he has trained daily in the nearby labyrinth. 5 years later, Luke counts his savings, totaling 100,000 gold after adding up 99,000 and 98,000. Having saved enough for the exam and packed his bags for a long trip, he calculates that running at full speed will get him to the town in about an hour. With resolve, Luke sets out for the Conqueror Academy. Animals watch in amazement at his incredible speed as he races toward the academy. Outside the academy, a crowd gathers, marveling at the remarkable magical power on display. As the son of a renowned noble family, Fasner impresses them. The spectators remark that they'd never witnessed such a powerful fireball. Fasner boldly claims he will become the top-ranked conqueror in the future, seeing it as only natural. The crowd cheers in awe, calling it extraordinary and praising Fasner as a brilliant mage over and over. Today is a memorable day as Fasner-sama makes a striking debut. Fasner proclaims he will become a legend at the exam site. Meanwhile, Luke politely asks someone for directions to the Conqueror Academy. Fasner, confused, wonders where this guy suddenly came from. After observing Luke, Fasner remarks that he clearly looks like a rural newcomer with all his luggage. He also notices strange leaves stuck to it, making him wonder what distant place Luke came from. While humming thoughtfully, Fasner points out that the Conqueror Academy is just down the road. But he adds it's a shame since Luke will likely fail, prompting Luke to ask why that would be. Fasner boasts that only he will pass, having been trained from childhood with an elite education to become a conqueror, and admits he's almost intimidated by his own talent. Meanwhile, Luke recognizes that the city's standards are truly different. Still, he says that's an issue, catching Fasner off guard. Luke explains he must become a conqueror to find his parents, but he can't afford to retake the exam if he fails, nor can he settle for being a freestyle conqueror. The crowd gasps in shock at the mention of freestyle. Amid the awkward tension, Luke wonders what's wrong with the atmosphere and if he said something odd. Fasner replies that it's natural to feel repulsed by the idea of being a freestyle conqueror, to which Luke asks if that's really true. Thanking Fasner for the insight, Luke offers a gift in gratitude. Despite Luke's insistence that it's tasty, Fasner repeatedly declines it. Reflecting on the interaction, Luke decides city people are kind, noting how Fasner showed him the way and even turned down a gift, before saying goodbye with a friendly "see you around." Fasner, still confused, wonders what was up with that guy. At the Conqueror Academy, the status exam begins. Luke is astonished, realizing this is the Conqueror Academy he's always dreamed of. Before the test starts, the instructor orders everyone to fill out their status chart, and Luke carefully records the details exactly as he saw them using status magic. As the proctor collects the charts, students murmur that she's attractive, but she sternly bans whispering. Suddenly, the instructor looks shocked upon seeing Luke. She asks if there are any errors in his written information. Luke assures her there are none. Though it feels unsettling not to use honorifics with an adult, he understands this is conqueror etiquette, as honorifics could reveal one's position to enemies. The instructor, looking worried as she reviews his paper, eventually nods in acknowledgement. Sensing she wanted to say something, Luke hears her announce the start of the exam. Moving to the academic exam, the instructor hands out the test papers, but firmly warns not to open them until the signal. Luke thinks to himself that it's finally beginning. Even while struggling with status magic, he has diligently studied academic and practical skills. Hoping for success, he wishes everything goes smoothly. Advancing to the practical exam, Swaro introduces himself as the instructor and explains that the practical exam is next. Whispers among the examinees reveal that only 3 passed last year because of Swaro, noting this year's examiners are all tough. Swaro explains there are 5 targets 20 meters away, instructing candidates to hit them with magic, limited to 5 attempts. As the first examinee tries, he struggles to activate his magic, already reaching his limit and finding it tough to hit from this distance. He admits this is his maximum effort. Fafnir, slightly surprised, asks what they're afraid of. Offering to show how it's done, he tells everyone to watch closely as he demonstrates. Casting a fireball, Fafnir releases a spell that sparks gasps from the crowd for its intense power. Commanding it to strike, the fireball amazes onlookers who wonder if he's truly just an examinee. It then hits and destroys 3 targets in a row. The crowd marvels that Fafnir struck 3 targets before even joining the academy, praising his remarkable precision. Swaro rates the performance as average, pointing out that Fafnir shot 5 times and hit 3 targets. Calling the next participant, Swaro notes that this year's group doesn't seem very promising, though Fafnir stands out as the strongest. Now it's Luke's turn. When Luke asks if he can use magic other than Fireball, Swaro questions if he really plans to use something else, noting that Fireball, as the first magic beginners learn, is the safest option. Swaro adds that he doesn't mind, but if Luke misses, it's not his concern. Luke agrees that no matter how strong an attack is, it's useless if it doesn't hit. With that, Luke greases a powerful attack aimed directly at the central target, planning to use the blast wave to burn all nearby targets at once, shocking the crowd. Luke explains that his spell is a single fireball infused with maximum magic power, designed to explode on impact, surprising the crowd. At last, Luke releases a flame burst. The blast engulfs the area, sending shockwaves that push people back in panic, as Luke's attack successfully strikes all 5 targets. The crowd watches in stunned silence, and Swaro demands to know what kind of magic that was. Frustrated, Swaro questions the strength of that power, noting it's excessively strong, while Luke admits he meant to cast a powerful spell. Luke decides the test is ideal, and sees no need to use his remaining 4 attempts, noting it seems they're waiting the rule to cast 4 more times. Wondering if it's truly necessary, Luke listens as Swaro clarifies that the goal is to hit the 5 targets one by one to prove accuracy, adding that if someone can control such potent magic and hit the center target, their accuracy is clearly a pass. Luke understands the explanation. Having assumed the test was about destroying the most targets in the fewest tries, Luke confesses his mistake and apologizes for damaging the venue. Swaro laughs loudly, calling it proof of great potential, and remarks that Luke is truly an odd one. The following day, a crowd gathers for the announcement of the exam results. Spectators express amazement, noting that Fafnir-sama passed effortlessly, as expected. Fafnir confidently declares that failing was never a possibility for him. Spotting the rural boy from before, Fafnir recalls that he was the most impressive after himself and wonders if he should go talk to him. Approaching with a greeting, Fafnir jogs Luke's memory about their earlier encounter. Acknowledging that Luke passed as well, Fafnir praises the impressive magic he displayed during the test. Looking forward to spring, Fafnir suggests he might consider Luke a rival. However, Luke clarifies that he hasn't seen the results yet due to the large crowd. Thanks to Fafnir, the crowd parts, allowing Luke to check the results. To his bewilderment, Luke finds out he didn't pass. While Luke reels from the shock, a kind girl cautiously approaches, asking if he's okay. She expresses surprise and says that everyone has their own situation, so she can't ask him to wait 6 months for the next exam. She adds that becoming a freestyle conqueror will surely be tough. Luke reflects on the feared and overlooked profession, realizing he has now become a freestyle conqueror. 5 years ago, Luke's parents vanished and never returned home. As a result, he honed his skills in a maze close to his mountain home. To search for his parents, he trained to become a strategist and took the entrance test for a school. Though he believed he had succeeded, he was puzzled by his failure. Despite feeling self-assured, the outcome was disappointing. At the Runework Guild, Luke sighed when he saw his failing result. He found the outcome particularly tough to accept. Additionally, he thought about his path as a self-taught strategist. Moving forward, he wondered what would happen next. The day before, at the Conqueror School's announcement for successful applicants, he encountered Swaro. This led him to question why his inability to use status magic was cited as the reason for his failure. Swaro clarified that stats are typically indicated by letters, with S being the highest and I the lowest. He then inquired if Luke had written odd math on his status sheet. Luke confirmed that he had written numbers as instructed. Swaro pointed out that even if Luke had recorded incorrect stats, it was a mistake. Still, he said he'd review it later, so it wasn't an issue, but no matter how many times the inspection machine was checked, it only displayed S. Swaro wondered if it was a glitch, as S wasn't a recognized rank. Shocked, Luke realized this was unheard of, and concluded that what he had learned wasn't status magic at all. Thus, it meant he hadn't mastered status magic. Luke noticed that his written exam score appeared quite low, which surprised him as it meant he didn't do well on that part either. Swaro mentioned a final question about handling a powerful enemy. He asked if Luke recalled his response. Luke remembered describing his combat techniques, such as using the terrain for cover or striking from beyond a monster's view, based on his daily battles in the Labyrinth near his mountain home. Swaro explained that the correct answer was simply to flee. Luke questioned if that was really the case. Swaro assured him it was just an entrance exam after all. He added that Luke's response suited advanced fighters, but it would be dismissed as too complex for a beginner. Swaro noted that, unfortunately, Luke didn't pass this time but urged him to master status magic and try again. He believed that once Luke learned status magic, he'd never fail again. Encouraged by the praise, Luke felt it must be true. He appreciated Swaro's clear explanation of his failure, which helped him understand. Swaro encouraged him further, saying Luke had the potential to be an exceptional strategist and wished him luck. Determined, Luke vowed to pass the next exam. However, the Conqueror School's entrance exam cost 50,000 gold per attempt, a hefty sum, and he needed to consider his living expenses. With only 100,000 gold originally and much of it spent, he couldn't wait another year. Desperate, he was shocked by his situation. So Luke arrived in the nearby city of Runework, registering as a sole adventurer at the guild. When he approached receptionist Erin, she greeted him casually. She noted that sole adventurers faced tough challenges and advised him to stay resilient. Her tone gave Luke an uneasy feeling. Eager to start, he told her he wanted to take on a request immediately. Erin seemed uneasy as she explained that self-taught explorers weren't trusted since they hadn't graduated from an explorer school. As a result, they couldn't join the guild and begin at the lowest F rank. A guild was a team of explorers sharing common goals. Essentially, all requests were handled through the guild. For an individual F rank, the only request available for a self-taught explorer was the one she could offer. Luke was surprised to hear it was a stake removal task in a C-rank labyrinth. In a labyrinth stake was an object that, when removed, stopped monsters from appearing. Unlike the exciting task of defeating monsters, this was merely the routine job of pulling out stakes. Frankly, it was a rather tedious task. The reward was 5,000 gold, but for a C-rank dungeon, it was quite risky, and the pay didn't seem fair. Erin asked what he planned to do. Luke thought 5,000 gold was enough for one person to scrape by, so he decided to accept the request. He knew he had to take on requests and rank up to access better ones. He thanked Erin for her help, and she reacted with surprise before wishing him luck. The party leader kept track of everyone. As the leader of the stake-pulling group, their ranks were shown on a board. The sub-leader of the stake-pulling team said they would move in when the time was right. The main party, which was clearing monsters ahead, should be progressing through the labyrinth step by step. An E-rank member asked if they noticed the high-quality equipment. They were likely using it to fight monsters directly. Another member remarked that such feats were impossible for low-rank explorers like them. The E-rank member wondered what good a simple cloth and cheap leather gear could do, stressing that low ranks should stick to their role of pulling stakes. Meanwhile, the leader pointed out something specific. While reviewing the stats file, he questioned what it meant, noting it showed F rank and wondering if it also indicated self-taught status, though the sub-leader called it a failure. Worried, the leader turned to Luke, asking if he was all right and warning that there was no assurance he'd survive the dungeon. Luke replied that he understood, explaining that living near a labyrinth meant he was always risking his life. Still, the leader urged him not to hold the group back too much. In his mind, Luke thought it was typical for low-ranked, self-taught strategists to be underestimated, but being doubted didn't lessen his reward. Shortly after, the leader noted that 30 minutes had passed since the main party left, suggesting it was time for their group to move out too. Deep in the labyrinth, the high-level team fought fiercely. They cheered triumphantly after defeating the monsters. However, one member remarked that the fight was tougher than expected and asked the leader what to do next. The leader found the dungeon oddly challenging, noting that the encounter was too intense for a C rank, with the dungeon boss's room up next. The team questioned whether it was safe to keep going. Laughing, the leader called it a breeze, saying they'd come too far to retreat now. He highlighted that the reward was close, while team members assured themselves they'd be fine. The leader, full of confidence, said he'd always succeeded before and was certain he'd succeed again. He teased the sub-leader for being cautious, prompting the sub-leader to ask if that was true. If it was the leader's order, he'd follow. As tension grew, Luke's team moved forward, carrying torches and weapons. As they navigated the labyrinth, the leader asked Luke if he had cleared a nearby room, pointing to his stake and telling him to pull it out already, while calling him utterly useless. Luke retorted that he didn't want to hear that from those who were lazing around. Their task was to remove the labyrinth stakes left in each room after the monsters were defeated. By taking these stakes outside and turning them in as proof of their work, they'd earn a reward. The leader grumbled that this was a tedious job, longing for something more exciting, while the sub-leader called it dull and suggested Luke do all the work, mocking his self-taught skills as worthless. Amid the team's pointless bickering, Luke heard a strange noise. He wondered if it was a monster, accompanied by the sound of monstrous footsteps. Luke warned that monsters were approaching from ahead. The leader, however, insisted that couldn't be true, as the main party should have already cleared the monsters in the next room. An E-rank member asked if any monster could slip past the main party leader's detection. The situation felt suspicious. By now, it was odd that they hadn't encountered the main party, and if the room was cleared, they should have met them already. The sub-leader reacted with alarm. A monster was heading their way. The C-rank labyrinth was meant for C-rank or higher conquerors, raising doubts about whether this was real, especially since even a low-rank stake puller like Barty would have to fight. With no escape, it became an urgent crisis. Everyone had to flee. As a wolf charged swiftly toward Luke's team, they realized they couldn't outrun it, with the monsters closing in fast. The team sprinted forward with grim expressions, catching Luke off guard. He recognized his status as an F-rank, self-taught conqueror. The leader, assuming Luke would be chosen as bait, apologized for the decision. Luke was bewildered by this. The leader explained it was the group's choice, not personal, and shoved him toward the monster. The entire party fled, abandoning Luke, who felt deeply betrayed. It seemed escape was impossible. Luke realized he had no option but to fight. In his mind, he planned that if he leaped upward, the monster would reach his position in 0.2 seconds, targeting him mid-air, giving him a brief window to strike. He decided to seize that moment. Taking a resolute breath, he readied himself. Internally, he noted that fighting monsters wasn't part of the reward, making it unpaid work, but he couldn't just let himself die. Wondering if this was typical for a first job and noting the monster's presence, Luke launched his attack, unleashing a fireball. The monster fell to the strike. Pleased, Luke confirmed his victory, having used minimal magic to avoid collapsing the dungeon, and it appeared successful, though he noticed a savory smell. Thinking about his next move, Luke considered retreating. However, he rejected the idea, realizing that leaving without the labyrinth stakes meant no payment, and he needed money for exam fees and living expenses. Noticing stakes left behind by other stake-pulling teams, Luke chose to continue. He collected them, verifying that these were all the stakes from their path. Using an item box, a magic that stored items in another dimension, which most magic users could access though capacity depended on skill, Luke stored the stakes. Feeling mocked for so long, Luke grudgingly carried the basket, but everything fit inside. An item box could hold far more than a wallet, which made sense to him. The day had been awful, so he focused on finishing his work quickly. Suddenly, Luke stopped, noticing something odd. He came across a menacing door and wondered if it was the labyrinth boss's room, observing that it was too dark to see clearly. The door felt heavy, and Luke struggled to move it. Using another fireball, Luke blasted the ominous door open and saw it was now accessible. Inside, the high-rank main party lay panting, struggling to breathe. Luke wondered if he had accidentally knocked them out, unaware that the dungeon boss was looming right behind him. Abruptly, the dungeon boss emerged as a dire threat, devouring high-ranking members. Luke, shocked, identified it as the dungeon boss. As dread settled in, he realized the creature had eradicated his entire main party. Desperately, Luke shouted to pause, offering aid to a high-ranking player trapped in the boss's jaws. He identified the beast as a C-rank dungeon boss. He remembered a recent exam question about handling a powerful enemy, specifically how to tackle a strong foe. The solution surfaced in his mind. It was acceptable to flee. Yet despite the proctor's advice, the wolf's single bound covered more ground than he could, and its relentless stamina made escape impossible. A high-ranking member noted that 7 high-rankers survived only 5 minutes, urging Luke to flee while warning that a low-ranker like him had no chance. But then, the dungeon boss consumed the high-ranker, leaving Luke stunned. Resolute, Luke understood he had to strategize wisely to prevail. He observed the situation, questioning the beast's slow punch and noting that despite being a demon, it varied its attacks. Though confused, he saw its sluggishness. Reminding himself it was still a C-rank boss, he stayed vigilant and launched a fireball. The dungeon boss smashed through the ceiling, fragmenting into multiple wolves. Luke recognized it as the creature that destroyed 7 high-ranking adventurers, admitting he didn't expect the ceiling collapse to defeat the Labyrinth boss. Instead, it was a distraction, with his true target being this beast. Luke then unleashed a zero-distance flame burst against the dungeon boss. A fierce explosion hit the wolves, and Luke was stunned to see the dungeon boss dead. As he approached the wolf's body, Luke verified it was dead and questioned if the battle was truly over, noting that the steel-colored slimes spawning daily in the labyrinth near his home were much faster and tougher than this boss. At the Lunark City Guild, Luke considered that a C-rank dungeon boss couldn't be weak, theorizing he might have struck a critical spot and got lucky. Inside the guild, the leader recounted how he was attacked by a monster but managed to escape, while Luke watched a pile-pulling party. Aaron commented that the main party still hadn't returned, adding that it must have been terrible. The leader then shifted, asking what happened to Luke after he sacrificed himself to let them escape, expressing concern. Luke wondered if the leader forgot he used him as bait to get away. Luke calmly said there was no need to worry, surprising the entire squad as they noticed him standing behind them. The leader questioned if he was a ghost, but Luke confirmed he was still alive. The sub-leader exclaimed that the labyrinth should be challenging even for weaker foes, asking how Luke survived. Luke started to explain the situation clearly. The sub-leader accused him of defeating the lost demon and the labyrinth boss that destroyed the main party, asking if it was a joke and if he'd lost his mind from being abandoned. The sub-leader insisted that an F-rank self-taught adventurer couldn't possibly do that, calling him foolish. An E-rank member voiced disbelief that Luke took down a C-rank dungeon boss on his first mission. Luke asked if it was truly so hard to believe, then offered to show proof. He revealed the dungeon stake he'd retrieved, explaining it came from the boss room. The group gasped in shock at the sight. The leader, stunned, identified it as the Labyrinth stake for the boss room, noting he'd never seen one before. More crucially, the leader questioned where Luke got it, as Luke mentioned the item box. The leader doubted it could fit, asking what the trick was. An E-class member claimed it was surely fake during the verification process. Then Luke displayed a small glowing orb. Aaron realized it was genuine, while the team demanded to know what was said, and the leader addressed Luke, acknowledging who he was. In a surge of frustration, the leader hit Luke, insisting he should have revealed his strength from the beginning. As the blow struck, Luke noted it was the second elbow strike, recalling the first time it happened before. Meanwhile, Aaron asked what all the fuss was about. The guild head, Harrigan, and the vice guild master, Ro, arrived at the scene. Harrigan voiced out that an F-rank self-taught adventurer like Luke could single-handedly defeat a boss that annihilated a C-rank party, finding it unbelievable. Ro suggested a more plausible explanation. The main party was weakened after beating the dungeon boss and then fell into a trap, causing their demise. With sternness, Harrigan demanded the truth. He commented on Luke's slyness for a self-taught adventurer, insisting that deceit wouldn't escape their notice. Luke replied that he had no reason to lie, as he only took the mission to retrieve the dungeon stake, and defeating the boss alone wouldn't increase his reward. Additionally, Luke pointed out that even if there were profit, it wasn't enough motive to kill a stranger. Harrigan let out a soft chuckle, asking if Luke's story of being attacked by stray monsters and being the sole survivor was also part of his act. As Aaron stepped forward, she noted that Luke had recently failed the Pathfinder Academy exam, adding that even a surprise attack couldn't trap a high-ranking Pathfinder. Harrigan concluded that Luke was insignificant, and Aaron nodded in agreement. Luke wondered if he should see that as a clever deflection. Still, Luke acknowledged that skepticism was expected, but if given an opportunity to prove himself, he would take it. Harrigan demanded quiet, declaring that they had never trusted a single word Luke said from the beginning. Ro announced that the Union's leaders would discuss the matter, ordering Luke to stay at a Union facility that night to prevent him from escaping. Silently, Luke reflected that he wouldn't know his fate until the next day. At the Union High Council, Harrigan expressed disbelief, no matter how often he heard it, that a C-rank dungeon had wiped out an entire party. He speculated that it was likely an act of vengeance by that crude self-taught adventurer, Luke, driven by resentment toward the elite, and that execution was inevitable. The council nodded in full agreement. Harrigan openly wondered what a self-taught adventurer who failed the Conqueror School exam could possibly achieve. Suddenly, a man from the royal capital dungeon raiders interjected, mentioning the Conqueror School and an intriguing tale. He revealed that someone had scored perfectly on the practical exam yet still failed. The council demanded to know who this person was and how long he'd been there, as he replied nonchalantly. As shock grew, the council recognized him as a royal capital dungeon raider and questioned his presence. They expressed disbelief about a perfect practical exam score and whether such a person existed, to which he confirmed it was true. He added that, hypothetically, if Luke were self-taught, he could easily clear a C-rank dungeon, being top tier. By doubting him, they risked making an enemy of the strongest. The council reacted with fury, telling him to mind his words and insisting there was no evidence since Luke was merely self-taught. He cautioned that if they were wrong, the guild could be destroyed in an instant. Unfazed, he mentioned having already spoken to the school, with the truth coming tomorrow, and advised against assumptions. The council dismissed the talk as foolish rumors, but he agreed calmly, declaring that tomorrow Luke's true cunning would be revealed. The following morning, a guard commanded Luke to leave immediately for an urgent meeting. Luke was grateful for not having to pay for lodging but grumbled about getting no sleep under their watchful eyes as the guard directed him to enter. Curious, Luke wondered aloud what this emergency meeting could be about. Stepping into the Union Council room, Luke noticed everyone seemed extremely tense. He felt the weight of being judged without doubt, deciding that if it came to it, he used force to escape, making sure no one was harmed. But Swaro shouted to stop and asked what Luke was doing. Surprised, Luke recognized Swaro's voice, remembering him clearly. Realizing Swaro was the practical exam proctor, Luke was stunned, as Swaro greeted him casually and announced he was there to clear Luke's name. The council accused Luke of the serious crime of murdering 7 main party members in the C-rank Labyrinth. Luke explained that he had no choice but to retrieve the Labyrinth stakes and defeat the boss alone after his party abandoned him, caught off guard by sudden monsters. Harrigan rejected the idea that a weak, self-taught F-rank could achieve such a feat, alleging Luke trapped and killed the weakened main party after they defeated the boss. Luke reflected on being blamed for the deaths of the main party, who were actually destroyed by the boss. Now a hostile inquisition had begun, and Luke's fate hung in the balance. The council asked if Luke wished to revise his story, to which he replied that there was nothing to change as he was telling the truth, just as he had the previous day. Harrigan criticized Luke's stubbornness and lack of remorse. He then questioned how long Luke could keep up that stance, noting that he had called the exam proctor to testify, warning that if Luke was lying, he'd be imprisoned immediately. Turning to the examiner, Harrigan asked if Luke's lowly self-taught skills could possibly defeat a dungeon boss strong enough to wipe out a C-rank party. With impatience, Harrigan urged the examiner to quickly reveal the truth, demanding action. Swaro confessed that even he didn't fully grasp Luke's abilities, but he swore to demonstrate Luke's extraordinary power, stating he wouldn't be shocked if Luke defeated a formidable dungeon boss alone. The council gasped, demanding to know what he meant. Swaro clarified that during the practical exam at the school, Luke didn't just hit 5 targets but utterly destroyed all 5. He described the target as a blend of orichalcum and mithril, claiming it was likely the toughest in the world. Luke wondered if the target was truly that remarkable and where the effort was focused. The council acknowledged that destroying such a target proved its authenticity, yet they found it even harder to believe. Harrigan warned Swaro to mind his words, threatening to label him an accomplice. Swaro retorted that the distrust in Luke stemmed from his self-taught status, explaining Luke was disqualified only for lacking status magic, while vouching for his strength. Rowe concluded that if a former B-rank slayer and witness like Swaro believed it, there was no room for doubt. Luke realized the practical examiner was a former B-ranker, thanking him silently. The council expressed disbelief at such strength, admitting it would be an incredible feat if true. Harrigan urged them not to be swayed, as the council exclaimed in shock. In a burst of rage, Harrigan launched a fierce attack at Luke, causing the council to shout in alarm at the chairman and demand to know what was happening. Harrigan scoffed, asking if Swaro's judgment had dulled from years away from the battlefield, addressing him as a former B-rank conqueror. The council begged the guildmaster to calm down, warning that an A-rank spell at full power could destroy the guild. Amid cries to stop, Harrigan demanded silence, asserting that if Luke's power was genuine, it should withstand his attack. In fury, Harrigan called Luke a pathetic imitator. As the attack neared, Luke noted he restrained his power to avoid harming anyone while releasing a fireball. An explosion broke out, causing destruction from the fireball's impact. The fireball surged forward, clashing with Harrigan's attack, but Harrigan mocked it as a weak attempt with such a tiny fireball, as he'd expected. Luke's attack neutralized Harrigan's assault, drawing stunned looks from the council. In disbelief, the council noted that such a small fireball had canceled the attack. Harrigan, amazed, questioned what kind of power it held, expressing his disbelief. Luke warned against insulting the practical examiner, even if the insults were aimed at him. Harrigan, stammering, admitted that was his strongest attack. Visibly shocked and shaken, Harrigan faltered, while Ro acknowledged fully grasping Luke's strength now. Ro also apologized for his earlier rudeness. In a gracious gesture, Ro announced he had arranged for Luke to receive the main party's reward as a special exception. Ro pleaded with Luke to keep quiet about today's events. Inwardly, Luke saw it as a gag order, but recognized that the money would cover his exam fees and living costs. Still, Luke paused, thinking of the deceased main party's comrades and families. He understood the grief of losing loved ones, so he refused to accept the reward, insisting it be used for a memorial. Ro initially resisted, but was surprised by Luke's stance. Luke reassured him it was okay and promised to stay silent, acknowledging Ro's reasons. Ro finally nodded in understanding. Breathing a sigh of relief, Luke felt drained from the day. Elsewhere, a royal man laughed quietly, declaring Luke was truly exceptional. He confirmed it was wise to witness Luke's power firsthand, thrilled that it was genuine and liking him even more now. Swaro thanked Luke for defending him earlier. He admitted Luke's ability to counter the guild master's powerful magic with a small fireball was astonishing. Luke brushed off the thanks, expressing gratitude instead for Swaro's testimony, saying he only did what was right. Curious, Luke asked Swaro about the next exam's date. Swaro replied it was in 6 months. Luke privately regretted not taking the reward after all. Yet with his skill level, he realized school wouldn't teach him much. Reflecting further, Luke noted that this whole situation stemmed from his self-taught methods in the first place. Luke couldn't deny that his self-taught methods were unreliable, an undeniable reality. The only solution was to enroll in a school and graduate. Swaro brushed it off lightly, saying it was no big deal. He encouraged Luke, saying he'd be waiting for him at the next exam. Determined, Luke vowed to pass next time. With 6 months to go and his money running out in about 10 days, he decided to focus on his self-taught work until then. The next day at Lunark Guild, Luke was shocked to find 0 requests available. Aaron confirmed that there were no requests suitable for an F-rank self-taught adventurer from the guild. Luke lamented his status, noting that as a self-taught adventurer, he couldn't join a guild and access requests. Aaron explained how guild requests worked, emphasizing that school graduates affiliated with a guild earned high trust and plentiful requests, while self-taught conquerors unaffiliated with a guild faced low trust and scarce client requests. Luke accepted that he had no choice but to take whatever guild requests he could get. He planned to return tomorrow and asked Aaron to notify him if any requests arose. Spotting the request board, Luke noticed an announcement welcoming beginners with no rank or experience needed, urging them to defeat weak monsters and conquer an E-rank dungeon for a 1 million gold reward, promising a chance to become the cool main party they always dreamed of. Intrigued, Luke found the request highly appealing. He went back to Aaron to ask about it, puzzled why such a lucrative offer wasn't being snapped up. Aaron explained that the request was posted without guild approval, and the unusually high reward made people suspicious, so no one wanted to take it. Luke reacted with curious surprise. Aaron explained that newly discovered dungeons were typically managed by the guild or through orders placed with guilds, and she was among those unable to accept such requests, especially since they'd recently become overwhelming. She continued, noting that sometimes residents seeking a quick dungeon capture would post requests independently, bypassing the guild. Luke wondered if that explained it. Aaron elaborated that dungeons were places where magical energy concentrated, spawning monsters. Naturally occurring dungeons started small, but if left unchecked, or if captures repeatedly failed, they would expand, potentially rendering areas uninhabitable. Luke understood the urgency for quick captures, reflecting that his own home had been overtaken by a dungeon. Aaron added that investors could set their own terms, which varied but were often more lenient than guild-ordered requests, like this one with no rank restrictions, where the guild merely facilitated the posting. Still, Aaron questioned whether it was wise to even share such a suspicious request. After reviewing the request form, Luke declared it was fine and insisted on taking it. At the east gate of Runark City, Luke wondered if that was the main party assembling. Alan waved eagerly, calling him over. With a friendly greeting, Alan confirmed Luke's identity, introduced herself as the party leader, and expressed delight in meeting him. Alan eagerly introduced the fantastic members joining them today. With a pile-pulling party prepared, she urged them to set off for Lenon Village, where the E-rank dungeon awaited. As they started their journey, Alan asked if it was true that Luke had gone wild in a C-rank dungeon. Surprised, Luke wondered where that rumor came from. Word had spread that, despite being a self-taught D-rank, he had shredded a C-rank dungeon boss and tossed it around. Some even claimed he tore it apart and defeated it single-handedly. Luke firmly denied it was him. Meanwhile, other members shared rumors that he'd turned into a demon and scorched the entire area, or that he'd defeated the boss with fire magic or even his breath. In town, people mocked him, saying an F-rank self-taught couldn't possibly do that. Luke challenged them, asking what if he actually had defeated it. Alan found the idea intriguing but assumed it was a lie, which she thought was a pity. Another member nodded in agreement. Confused, one member seriously remarked what an odd rumor to circulate. Luke explained that things had been tense lately, which likely fueled the gossip. He reflected that a little excitement like this wasn't so bad now and then. Alan eagerly suggested celebrating tonight if she completed the mission, proposing to splurge all the rewards. A teammate enthusiastically agreed, suggesting a festival with the earnings. However, the one-eyed man noted that spending everything defeated the purpose of working. Upon arriving, the chauffeur announced they had reached Lenon Village and asked everyone to get off. Examining Lenon Village, Alan questioned whether this was truly an E-rank dungeon. Warning that the pile-pulling party could be risky, she advised waiting at the entrance for a bit. Luke observed that there were few villagers, likely because most had relocated elsewhere. Suddenly, he realized they were at the dungeon's entrance. Inside, Alan complained that the labyrinth had grown significantly, and the monsters' noises were irritating. Feeling uneasy, Luke sensed this wouldn't be a simple E-rank job due to a strange presence lingering. A team member urgently stressed the need to stay alert. Within Lenon Village's E-rank dungeon, a 7-colored lizard monster appeared. Alan ordered all units to launch an attack. The battle begins. Luke showcases his talent by swiftly slaying a lizard in one strike. After this quick triumph, a team member voices contentment, noting it was an easy victory. Alan mentions his early doubts about the mission but confirms the monsters are in DE rank. The one-eyed member feels reassured, observing that the mission seems achievable. Then, Alan turns to Luke, intrigued, and asks how he learned to use magic. During the discussion, Luke is surprised that others are curious about his tale of defeating a C-rank dungeon boss. He also recalls how his father first taught him magic, though as a young boy, he struggled to beat even weak monsters. Luke further shares that after his explorer parents vanished 5 years ago, he trained tirelessly until he could defeat regular monsters, motivated to become an explorer, earn money, and search for his parents, often poring over magic books in his father's study. Alan, shocked, asks if Luke's parents really disappeared. Luke admits he's inquired around but found no clues about their location. Alan is stunned to learn Luke lived alone for 5 years as a child. Luke explains that his house, luckily situated deep in the mountains, provided plenty of food as long as he stayed there, gathering and cooking everything himself. Meanwhile, the one-eyed member asks about money, and Luke reflects that he rarely has chances or needs to spend it, managing everything on his own in the mountains. Luke also admits he was weak as a child of the mountains, stressing that money is extremely valuable to him since he doesn't earn much. Lastly, Luke reveals he had only the precious 100,000 gold his parents left him, saving it until needed and using 5,000 gold for the exam fee. The team bonds. They are amazed by the challenges Luke faced at such a young age. Meanwhile, Alan comforts Luke, encouraging him to share any troubles and accept support. He adds that, though they just met, they're comrades who rely on each other's lives, hoping to remain friends forever. Quietly, Luke reflects on their bond as comrades. Luke suddenly feels an odd presence. At the same time, Alan excitedly realizes they've reached the boss room. He praises their perfect timing but warns that, despite being E-rank, the boss demands caution from now on, urging everyone to stay alert. With resolve, Alan leads the group forward. Determined, Alan states their goal to defeat the giant lizard. The team plans to first cut off its tail. They also strategize to blind it next. As the battle heats up, the lizard moves sluggishly, its actions noticeably slow. Alan, relieved, notes its dull movements and urgently calls for Luke's help. Luke assesses the situation, deciding it's enough to act, and readies his magic. Soon after, the lizard is struck by a small burst of flame. As the fight continues, the giant lizard's remains burn from the attack. Alan is amazed, remarking that a single hit was enough and calling Luke's magic incredibly powerful. She also thinks about the rumor that Luke defeated a C-rank dungeon boss alone, while Luke shrugs, unsure and saying who knows. Luke then holds a large stake, explaining it's the dungeon stake from the boss room and planning to hand it to the stake-pulling party on his way out. Reflecting, Luke notes the dungeon was simpler than expected, wondering if he was just overly anxious, while Alan cheers their success, suggesting they return and grab drinks at a great spot he knows. As they prepare to leave, Alan agrees and decides to invite the pile-pulling party too. Suddenly, a strange noise puts the group on edge. Amid the tension, Luke feels something off, recalling the same uneasy feeling from earlier and admitting it gives him a bad vibe. Alan warns that the pile-pulling party might be in trouble, urging everyone to rush. With growing urgency, the group hurries toward a cave, clearly shocked. Luke asks what happened there. Moments later, Luke confirms with horror that the pile-pulling party has been completely wiped out. As the situation worsens, the pile-pulling party members cough up blood. Luke asks what's wrong. He then spots a projectile, wondering if it's from a bandit or something else. The team curses their predicament, questioning where the attack is coming from, noting the rocky, layered terrain is ideal for hiding. Luke figures out that the enemy is using throwing weapons to strike from hidden spots, noting that he could dodge them if he were alone. Alan decides to investigate, ordering everyone else to hide and take cover. Meanwhile, Luke chooses to check the opposite side, and Alan urges him to go ahead. The team members admit that, despite being told to hide, they're shaking with fear. Luke yells at them urgently, telling them to hide fast and warning that stopping means death. Alan sees her team members dying and steps forward to save them, only to be hit by multiple shots herself. In the aftermath, Luke is stunned to see Alan in such a condition. Weakly, Alan calls out to Luke for help. Memories flood back as Luke recalls Alan's words about being comrades who trust each other with their lives, even though they just met. Focusing, Luke closes his eyes and scans the area. Soon after, he pinpoints the enemy's location. With resolve, Luke attacks all the enemies with kicks. Then he starts tying up 2 of them. Luke demands to know who the enemies are and why they're attacking. He presses them to answer. One enemy stammers that he'll talk, confessing they're thieves who lured Luke's party into the labyrinth to ambush them. Shocked, Luke mutters in disbelief, questioning if they were really lured. The enemy brags that the request Luke accepted was their trap, mocking him for falling for it completely. Unknown to Luke, a shadow creeps up behind him, ready to strike. As the ambush intensifies, a bald enemy strikes Luke. The enemy shouts in panic, calling for the boss. Luke, caught off guard, questions what just happened and realizes another foe was lurking. The enemy boss, with a mocking tone, admits Luke dodged skillfully. Growing bolder, an enemy boasts that with the boss here, victory is certain, urging the boss to deal with Luke quickly. Suddenly, the group lets out a cry of anguish. Amid the turmoil, the enemy boss sneers that they still think he's human, calling his comrades naive optimists, then removes his mask to reveal he's a lizard, shocking both his allies and Luke. Luke recognizes the enemy as a shape-shifting demon, recalling his father's warning that talking demons are dangerous. The enemy boss brags that their original boss was absorbed into his body and died long ago, unnoticed by the others, and now he commands the thieves, finding his foolish comrades useful. He further reveals that while the 2 thieves wanted money, he craved blood and flesh from the beginning. Menacingly, the enemy boss nears Alan. While licking her face, he gloats that he's secured fine blood and flesh again, remarking on her beauty and how delectable she seems. The enemy boss mocks Luke, asking if he's angry. He presses further, taunting Luke again about his anger and telling him not to act calm. Moving swiftly, the enemy boss vanishes into hiding. His confused comrades shout that he's disappeared. The enemy boss brags about his ability to blend into the surroundings. With a mocking tone, he challenges Luke to dodge an attack from an unknown direction. Suddenly, he calls out from one spot. Moments later, he shouts from another, launching hidden attacks on Luke and the others. In desperation, his comrades cry out that this is hopeless and admit they're terrified of dying. As the assault presses on, the enemy boss taunts Luke, repeatedly asking what he'll do while admitting his own fear of being sliced up and killed. Noticing something odd, the enemy boss hesitates, asking what Luke is up to. Meanwhile, Luke greedies an attack. With rising panic, the enemy boss is amazed by the scale of Luke's magic, acknowledging that an unavoidable attack is effective if they can't see it. As the moment peaks, Luke releases a powerful ultimate flame burst. In the wake of the battle, Luke's attack reduces the enemy boss to ashes. Luke sighs in relief, noting the dungeon held up and declaring the ordeal over. With authority, he orders the 2 surviving enemies to follow him. The scene shifts to Lenon City, inside the guild. Luke reports that, as the bandit confessed, their party was ambushed and nearly wiped out. Harrigan comments that a lot happened this time too. Luke quietly observes that the guild master seems more subdued since the last incident, suggesting that his anger toward the law, as guild master, has likely caused him many struggles with his unique approach until now. Harrigan expresses worry that 2 parties were wiped out in such a short time, with only 1 survivor. Luke clarifies he didn't do anything, and Harrigan acknowledges this but hesitates, saying he knows but. Seriously, Harrigan remarks that Luke feels like a Grim Reaper. Luke quietly agrees, conceding that Harrigan's assessment is fair. Reflecting, Luke admits that 17 people around him died in just 4 days, finding it frustrating but agreeing with the label. He then decides to head back to the inn he rented and get some sleep. Suddenly, a scout interrupts, asking if Luke Kun has a moment. A brief silence follows with no words spoken. The scout reveals he's from the Royal Capital Labyrinth Raiders Association. Luke recalls that the Royal Capital Dungeon Capture Association is a prestigious guild that only accepts elite graduates from the Adventurers Academy. The scout explains he's here to invite Luke to join their guild, leaving Luke stunned that a low-ranking, self-taught adventurer like him would receive such an offer. Internally, Luke wonders if someone like him could really join the Royal Capital Dungeon Capture Association. Shillua steps forward with a smile, introducing himself warmly to show his joy in meeting new people. His friendly tone creates a welcoming atmosphere. The setting shifts to the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquerors Association, highlighting its prestigious status. Among the gathered crowd, it's evident that only the best students from the Conqueror School are eligible to join. The association stands out as one of the nation's leading Conqueror guilds. Shillua wonders why such a prominent guild is interested in recruiting him, a solitary figure, sparking his curiosity. Standing nearby, he questions whether the lone wolf label truly suits him, picking up on others' thoughts. In a broader moment, Shillua turns to Luke, asking about his plans to enroll in the Conqueror's Academy. Luke nods, confirming his goal to join the academy after graduating. Shillua encourages him, warmly inviting Luke to join their group once he completes his studies. Amid the glow of an emblem, the narrative explains that the Royal Capital Labyrinth Capture Association's simple name reflects its immense strength. Luke notes that the organization's focus on post-graduation underscores the value of completing school. Shillua, in response, firmly expresses his determination to recruit Luke, stressing the association's dedicated efforts. Shillua mentions that Luke is probably familiar with the guild's reputation, suggesting it would suit him well. He highlights that the guild provides exciting quests and a group of skilled clearers to motivate Luke. Luke sees this as an incredible opportunity, but questions why the guild would recruit him, a self-taught person with no notable accomplishments. Shillua finds Luke's comment surprising, pointing out that Luke survived 2 party wipes, enduring damage that would have crushed an entire team. Luke reflects on past remarks, remembering being labeled the God of Death, a name that lingers even after leaving the guild. Shillua challenges this view, insisting that he sees Luke as a savior. Luke repeats the word savior, grappling with its significance. Shillua explains that the guild aims to grow its influence by leveraging Luke's strength. Luke feels the weight of the praise, recognizing its importance. Still, he doubts the choice to include him due to his God of Death reputation, though he sees no downside in having more options and no reason to decline. Shillua assures him that those rumors will fade over time, blaming the situation on a streak of misfortune. Luke agrees that bad luck played a role, while Shillua adds a thoughtful comment. The conversation shifts as Shillua contemplates the fragility of the lives of past teams. Luke is stunned by the remark, feeling its gravity. Shillua clarifies that such a statement reflects the harsh reality of a job with no assurance of survival, a common sentiment, though he pauses with an unfinished thought. Shillua explains that his weighty words stem from his role in the Royal Capital Dungeon Raiders, a group tackling numerous life-or-death missions. He adds that even the Grim Reaper label isn't an official title, so there's no need for concern. Luke reflects on the word title, sensing a vague memory from long ago. Shillua elaborates that titles are tied to one's status and can be viewed using status magic. He asks Luke why he can't use status magic himself. Luke accesses his status window, confessing he relies on odd-numbered magic because he failed an adventurer school exam. Shillua spots a title section in Luke's status, surprised to see it there. He stresses that status magic is key to understanding one's abilities and must be used correctly. As they step outside, Shillua offers to clarify the true meaning and impact of titles, noting that they provide ongoing buffs or debuffs. Shillua explains that buffs boost stats while debuffs lower them. Luke wonders if a title could have both effects, recalling a blank title field from a previous status magic check. He then asks if the Thief Slayer title shown matches what Shillua meant. Shillua nods, confirming the Thief Slayer title, noting its rarity and tying it to defeating thieves. Luke remembers a lizard enemy he once defeated, linking it to the title's origin. Shillua guesses the title might boost strength against thieves, but mentions its effect is only around 5%, calling it minor. He assures Luke that such details are taught at school and tells him not to stress. Shillua notes that this is basic knowledge for Conqueror School graduates, then says he's leaving. A moment later, he hesitates, lost in thought. Suddenly, Shillua launches a playful attack on Luke, catching him by surprise. Luke reacts with shock, but Shillua commends his quick reflexes, joking that watching from the sidelines isn't fun. Shillua suggests a practice match to evaluate Luke's skills for the Royal Capital Dungeon Capture Association. Luke wonders if this is a test of his abilities, pointing out the risks of fighting in the city. Shillua proposes heading to the suburbs and playing tag on the way, brushing off Luke's comment that he doesn't seem to listen. Amid the bustle of the street, Luke's former party leader notices the commotion, spotting Luke being chased. An E-rank player accuses Luke of causing trouble, but the old party leader defensively denies it. He admits to abandoning Luke once and asks for forgiveness, vowing to trust and protect him this time. The old party leader yells for Luke to run. Luke recognizes his old pile-pulling party from his first job, shocked by the unexpected reunion. The former party leader hurls a box at Shillua, but the sub-leader steps in, identifying Shillua as a member of the Royal Capital Labyrinth Raiders, surprising the party leader. Shillua skillfully avoids the box. His counterattack sends the leader tumbling to the ground. As Shillua and Luke stroll down the street, Luke sighs in relief, grateful they're unharmed. Luke offers an apology, but the old party leader laughs nervously, dismissing it. Heading into the countryside, Shillua remarks on the brief disruption but stays calm. He notes the quiet location, urging Luke to show his real magic. Luke stands his ground, insisting he won't use powerful magic against people. Shillua, skeptical, grins and asks if Luke can block him, a Royal Capital Dungeon conqueror, without it. With resolve, Shillua unleashes a lightning-fast sword strike to test Luke's defenses. Shillua swings again, impressed by Luke's ability to keep up with the speed but curious about how long he can evade. Luke acknowledges his endurance, saying he doesn't need to hold back, yet suggests a change is coming. Shillua watches in astonishment as Luke suddenly stops dodging. Shillua swings his sword once more, amazed as Luke blocks it with his bare hands. Luke, gaining confidence, murmurs his realization. In a quick motion, Luke punches the sword, recognizing it as a fake and releasing a fireball. Shillua stands stunned, watching Luke infuse his fist with fire to hit the blade. The sword drops as Shillua, surprised, admits it's wooden, explaining he never intended to hurt Luke. Shillua smiles, praising Luke's sharp perception. Luke recalls blocking Shillua's earlier strike, noting an uncut signboard that revealed the trick. Shillua responds with a sly chuckle. Shillua confesses the real test was Luke's ability to stay calm and observant. He stresses that while power is important, keen awareness is crucial in a dangerous job. Luke understands this as a test of wider abilities. Shillua acknowledges Luke's strong magic, but notes the fake sword was used to evaluate his observation skills, praising his excellence. He promises to share good news with his comrades and departs, inviting Luke to inquire about the Royal Capital Labyrinth Capture Association. Luke sits on the ground, relieved, and checks for injuries before reviewing his stats. He's surprised to see a plus symbol. Tapping it, he discovers the Thief Slayer effect, damage to thieves plus 100%, earned through his actions. A close-up of his status screen shows the Thief Slayer Plus title with its effect, next to Status Magic Plus. Luke wonders if clicking the plus reveals the title's effect, questioning the 100% damage boost against thieves. He pictures this doubling his attack power against thieves. Recalling Shillua's earlier words, Luke considers whether the title is unique or if Shillua's explanation was off, deciding to look into it further. After leaving Shillua, Luke thinks about his status display. At that moment, he contemplates checking the title's effect, observing that a 5% title boost usually appears as 100%. Shortly after, Luke chooses to explore further but grows annoyed when he gains nothing. Upon reaching the cheapest inn in Runork Town, Luke buys and studies the Strategist Academy exam prep book from a Runork bookstore. Still curious, he notices the plus notation isn't explained. Over time, Luke learns a little about titles, realizing their benefits match Shira's description, seeming to be just a few percent. Reflecting, Luke wonders if this indicates a correction value of 100, implying twice the strength, and notices a slight improvement in his stats. Ultimately, Luke decides that with 6 months until the next exam, he can delay status updates, focusing instead on earning money as a self-taught strategist. The next day, Luke finds no jobs for a solo F-rank self-taught explorer. At Lunar Guild, Aaron says sorry, noting there are no requests for a solo F-rank self-taught explorer, while Luke sees that dungeon exploration tasks are, as expected, fully handled by the guild. Disappointed, Luke had hoped for at least one request early in the morning. Meanwhile, Luke remembers knowing that good requests for an F rank would be scarce, yet he's surprised by the total absence of opportunities for so long. While thinking about what other jobless self-taught strategists do, Luke hears from Aaron, who confesses she's never known anyone succeeding alone. Aaron then gestures toward a flyer, encouraging Luke to check it out. The flyer announces a recruitment drive for self-taught guild members, causing Luke to shout about the self-taught guild. Aaron explains that this guild unites self-taught conquerors and provides more jobs than working solo. Nearby, people react, asking if Luke overheard, calling the self-taught guild a bunch of conqueror school dropouts. They further describe it as filled with tough characters and oddballs, hinting it might fit someone nicknamed Death God. In private reflection, Luke recognizes the self-taught guild's poor reputation. Noticing the conqueror aspirant system, Luke realizes the term self-taught is more disrespected than he expected, pushing him to seek jobs and consider joining. Meanwhile, onlookers mockingly call the recruitment poster a worthless notice for a dropout-run self-taught guild, choosing to rip it down. Aaron glares as they start tearing the flyer inside the guild. With tension rising, Aaron warns that destroying another poster won't be tolerated. Aaron also voices irritation at the repeated act of ruining posters. Shifting her focus, Aaron notes the hard work of self-styled guild members, finding it unacceptable to mock them while putting up a new flyer in the guild. In a quieter moment, Aaron mentions the exam is set for this afternoon. She adds that the exam itself has no cost. Kindly, Aaron encourages Luke to attend if he wishes. As the scene unfolds, a group of eccentric and diverse individuals gathers for the free exam. Luke observes more applicants than he anticipated, wondering if they're all aiming for the self-styled guild. He also recognizes that everyone seems jobless and facing hardships. In reflection, Luke spots an applicant for the self-styled guild, contrasting them with Fastener, a successful conqueror school applicant. Noting the vibe feels distinct, almost sparkling. Luke remarks that Fastener appeared especially radiant. Confused, Luke wonders where to find the reception. In response, Ryan questions if Luke's actions show he's new. Ryan also asks if Luke is lost and can't locate the reception. Curious, Luke wonders if a young person like Ryan is also a potential member, grateful for any shared details. With confidence, Ryan offers to clarify things for Luke, having taken exams there for years, and reveals there's no reception desk. Overwhelmed, Luke admits the information is hard to process. Amid the confusion, Ryan points Luke toward an older man with a gleam in his eye for more details, causing Raddy to object to being called that. Raddy then asks if Luke is an applicant hoping to join the self-taught guild. With authority, Raddy introduces himself as the self-taught guild's examiner. Luke acknowledges Raddy's role and expresses enthusiasm for working with him today. Raddy comments that Luke seems likely to flee the exam soon, wishing him luck. Luke asks about registering for the exam, only to learn from Raddy that the guild doesn't have such a system. Surprised, Luke reacts to the lack of a roster, while Raddy admits tracking so many applicants is a bother. Luke questions if it's really okay with so many people and no roster. Raddy observes that this time of year draws many who failed Conqueror school exams to this place. He bluntly calls it a fallback option, while Luke recalls that after failing the exam, Conqueror school students likely brushed it off as just the first school. Luke confesses he has no work, and Raddy says sorry if he assumed wrongly, though he confirms it's true. As tensions rise, guild members warned against mocking the self-taught guild, hinting that the exam will be extremely tough. Raddy stresses that conquerors face life-threatening risks, whether from a conqueror school or a self-taught guild. He tells everyone to relax until the exam starts. Ryan grumbles about Raddy's sharp eyes and harsh words, catching Luke off guard. Ryan swears to pass this time and show up the old man, piquing Luke's interest with a mention of a doll. Curious, Luke asks if the exam is really that difficult, and Ryan warns that taking it lightly will lead to regret. With resolve, Ryan vows not to quit, proclaiming that among many careers, Conqueror is the greatest, not just a job for money. To support himself, Ryan plans to earn a living elsewhere while repeatedly attempting the self-taught guild entrance exam until he succeeds. Luke listens, noting Ryan's determination to try multiple times. Ryan admits to facing various challenges, surprising Luke, who reflects on the self-taught guild entrance exam. As preparations continue, Luke realizes Aaron, the receptionist, didn't provide much detail, and Aaron notes that the exam is a major obstacle to joining. Aaron encourages Luke, believing in his ability, though Luke hopes she's right while privately worrying about the exam's challenges. Still anxious from failing the school exam, Luke steadies himself as Ratty announces everyone's arrival, counting roughly 150 people this time. Looking at the crowd, Luke comments on its size, spotting familiar faces from the Conqueror School's exam. One examinee grumbles about dreaming of a grand conqueror life through the school, feeling that joining the self-taught guild lacks prestige. Luke reflects that the guild's poor reputation accounts for the examiner's grumbling, as Ratty announces the start of the test, dropping hints about its nature. Ratty's next statement leaves the explanation unfinished. Abruptly, Ratty reveals the task is to clear the dungeon ahead, stunning everyone there. An examinee asks if that's the entire explanation, while Luke notes it's a newly opened dungeon, causing another examinee to panic and hesitate. In the confusion, an examinee exclaims they'd never heard of a dungeon-clearing task sprung so suddenly in an exam, fearing it could lead to death. Another examinee taunts the group, calling them weaklings from the dungeon clearer's school who will panic and die fast, until a sharp "shut up" from another silences them. Amid the disorder, Luke notices the examinees arguing and clashing with each other. Ratty intervenes, demanding quiet to regain control. Speaking to the group, Ratty questions whether they truly aim to become capturers, suggesting those afraid of death should go home and rest. The crowd reacts with shock. After Ratty's words, most examinees leave. Luke is amazed at how quickly things shift, observing that within 10 minutes, over half of the original 150 applicants left without entering the dungeon. Still, Luke sees many applicants remaining. He watches as they start a strategy meeting to plan the conquest, unsure about joining but thinking it over. Thinking about the dungeon, Luke views it as manageable and considers tackling it solo while others strategize. He remembers defeating a wolf, likely a tougher dungeon boss in the past. Luke verifies there are no rules against clearing it alone or mandating teamwork, brushing off any doubts. His attention turns to conquering the exam's challenge as his main goal. Watching from a distance, Ratty is surprised, expecting Luke to give up but noting his decision to take the lead, wondering if it's due to recklessness or self-assurance. Ratty observes that most would retreat in fear, yet Luke presses on. Meanwhile, Luke notices Ryan joining and wonders if he's being watched, while Rian decides to assess Luke's skills. Luke confidently navigates the guild's self-designed entrance exam, while other applicants falter, moving with steady determination. He believes the dungeon used for this test is likely not too perilous, and his curiosity sparks about what secrets it might hold. Meanwhile, he notices Rian's intense stare, wondering if it carries a deeper meaning. As chaos erupts, Ratty feels relieved for taking charge, but harbors a flicker of doubt. He watches the young warrior, suspecting he might flee like most recruits typically do. Growing worried, Ratty fears the young warrior could overestimate his abilities and fall to a demon's attack. In this uncertainty, Ratty debates whether to trail the young warrior and offer aid if trouble arises. As the atmosphere shifts, Luke detects a subtle change, perhaps relief from someone taking the lead as others begin to enter, reassuring himself that his approach remains unchanged, so there's no cause for concern. The other examinees follow closely, their presence heightening the tension. One suggests using the young warrior as a guinea pig to move forward, while another feels relieved, noting its fortunate and overconfident fool is present, enabling them to advance safely. As pumpkin-like creatures suddenly ambush the group behind Luke, fear spreads rapidly among the examinees. One shouts in alarm, crying out that the situation is dire as the threat intensifies. Spotting a pumpkin monster descending from above, the same examinee exclaims in pain and urges everyone to escape quickly. In the midst of the turmoil, another examinee boldly swears, refusing to be defeated by a mere pumpkin, and casts a fireball to strike the monsters. As the attack lands, he proudly declares that he had always claimed his strength, then murmurs in surprise at the result. Yet the pumpkins revive and launch another assault. An examinee cries out in distress, pleading for assistance as the danger escalates. Meanwhile, Luke, observing the relentless onslaught, resolves to eliminate the pumpkins ahead of him. With fierce determination, he casts a fireball, hitting the monsters with a powerful strike. Amid the chaos, a fireball explodes, scattering debris as the pumpkin creatures vanish instantly, prompting an examinee to express shock at their sudden disappearance. Luke pauses, noticing an unusual scent catching his attention. As the scene shifts, he surveys the charred pumpkins scattered across the ground. Relishing the smell of the demon pumpkin, though it overwhelms someone living in hardship, Luke continues forward, while an examinee grumbles that the stench of demon corpses ruins his appetite. Luke presses on through the dungeon, clearing his path by defeating all the pumpkins. Ratty, astonished, exclaims in disbelief at the scene. Ryan, frustrated, had intended to assess the newcomer's skills, but now marvels as the young warrior obliterates the pumpkins, wondering if his magic has any limits. As tension mounts, Rion wonders how the young warrior can move forward so fearlessly, her concern clearly visible. An examinee proposes that by letting him keep fighting monsters, they can progress easily, confidently declaring the test to be simple. Rady observes closely, determined to see if the young warrior defeats the enemies correctly. As the battle grows fiercer, Ratty states he won't approve someone who doesn't even attempt to face a beatable opponent, stressing that the guild doesn't need such useless members. Pumpkin monsters charge, overwhelming an examinee who curses, complaining that the creature moves too much to hit, while another mourns a shattered sword and depleted magic. That same examinee falls, admitting he's unable to continue. In a panicked rush, an examinee yells for everyone to flee as the group, unable to withstand the pumpkin onslaught, scatters. Luke watches, expressing confusion with a puzzled murmur. Rady evaluates the scene, noting that everyone has been defeated, and decides that struggling at the labyrinth's entrance shows they need basic training, remarking that the real challenge hasn't even begun. As the chaos subsides, Ratty questions if all the pumpkins near the entrance have been cleared. With a nod of admiration, he acknowledges the impressive feat of handling so many alone, asking if the young warrior is truly committed to continuing, to which Luke, surprised, affirms his determination. During this moment, Ratty vows to keep watching until the end. Luke senses something off, questioning the meaning behind that stare. He wonders if they doubt his ability to succeed, growing curious about what those two are focused on. Ryan's face betrays her astonishment. Ryan gazes with resolve, amazed at the young warrior's fearless advance. She confesses that her injury has weakened her magic, but she trusts she has enough power to defeat the monster. As the scene changes, Rion battles the creature. She mutters a curse, acknowledging the foe's strength, as past memories resurface. She admits that despite her training since that fateful day, she freezes in real combat. Luke shouts Rion's name, catching her off guard with a moment of confusion. Abruptly, a pumpkin monster lunges at Rion, and as Luke moves to rescue her, Ratty intervenes, insisting Rion must face it alone. Luke questions Rady's decision with surprise. Rady remembers how the old Ryan could destroy 5 such weak monsters at once. He notes that she once fought an opponent too powerful for her and was gravely injured. With worry, Rady explains that her trauma makes her hesitate against even beatable foes, while Rion fears this monster might be stronger than she expects, risking another severe wound. In a critical moment, Rion weighs her life's risks, as Ratty declares that to become a conqueror, she must overcome this challenge alone. Ratty braces himself, determined not to interfere for Rion's own good. As the situation grows tense, Luke understands that defeating the monster himself won't aid Rion, though he sees her distressed expression. Rion battles inner doubts, eager to fight but finding her body rigid and her magic uncontrollable, thinking that relaxing her shoulders might let her cast a spell. Luke urgently shouts Rion's name. Annoyed, Rion snaps back, wondering what this novice wants while she's preoccupied. Confidently, Luke asks if Rion noticed his magic earlier, claiming he can take down monster. He proposes they cast their magic together to defeat it simultaneously. Rion admits her unstable magic makes it tough alone, cautioning that a monster like this could instantly kill a beginner's magic. During their strategy, Luke assures her there's no need to fear failure or attack. Rion nods in agreement, ready to move forward, and rallies the newcomers with encouragement. She counts down from 3 to 1, and Luke confirms he's ready. As the countdown ends, a fireball rockets toward the target. Relieved, Rion exclaims she succeeded, confirming the monster's defeat, and calls to the newcomer. She commends his magic as impressively powerful, noting it was a one-shot kill, while Luke and Ratty watch Rion's thrilled expression. Suddenly, Rion's face turns to shock, then disgust, as she grimaces and says how gross that was. Luke confesses he didn't actually use magic, revealing he only mimicked casting it with a glowing effect. Stunned, Rion exclaims in disbelief, while Luke reassures her he always steps in to support her when she's struggling. Rion is amazed at how extraordinary the magic seemed. Ratty states that this magic is clearly the result of Rion's hard-earned skill, noting that distractions had previously hindered his focus. Rion's astonishment hangs in the moment. With pride, Rion proclaimed she defeated the monster, realizing it was by her own strength. She reflects on how long it's been since her trauma, understanding she cast magic without freezing because she trusted the newcomer's power. Her confidence surges as she sees her hands no longer shake. Rion attacks the pumpkin monsters with fresh energy, reassuring herself that everything is fine now. Gratefully, Rion thanks the newcomer for easing her fears and unlocking her strength. Luke modestly credits Rion's own efforts, insisting he did nothing significant. Rady reflects that he expected this entrance exam to attract unmotivated candidates, but now he holds high expectations for these two.